Awesome. Good morning. Good morning to our Industry Chats friends and viewers. My name is Jasmine Saliga. I'm the founder of Affixify, and I am beyond excited to have our feature guest this month, Josh Graham at Cloudbeds. Josh, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Jasmine. Really excited to be on here with you guys.
Well, there's a few things. I'm like, first of all, it comes full circle to have you on this show because, as we were just mentioning, about 8 years ago, we both worked for different companies and those companies merged. And so it's like a pinch me moment that now we're in totally different places, but we're having this conversation.
I was talking with someone the other day, and I was like, "Yeah, I've been in hospitality for about 30 years." And then after I was done crying in my coffee afterwards. But yes,
It goes fast. I'm coming up on 15 years already, and also we had talked about, okay, in May for Affixify, we really want to highlight PMSs and all that's going on because I feel like there's a lot being talked about with AI and all these new tools, but what's going on in the PMS world? And the very first person in our internal conversation of who do we bring on? It was Josh Graham. He is the person to talk about this. So I'm super honored that you're joining us, especially among a very busy schedule. So thank you for being here. And tell us a little about you before we jump in. I think everyone knows Josh Graham, but tell us about you and give us the quick pitch on Cloudbeds and what Cloudbeds is up to right now.
Yeah, sure. So, as I mentioned, I've been in hospitality for about 30 years. Like so many others, I got my start in the operations end of the business. Perhaps at a conference or something, I'll share my inception story into hospitality, but, fell into the industry like so many others. And then moved over to the technology side back in 2007, started working for TravelClick. And I was at TravelClick for 13 years through multiple private equity switches and finally the sale to Amadeus in 2018. Worked for them in a wide number of roles, ranging from territory-based sales to field marketing to product specialists to running the team that worked with our CRM platforms, which was when you and I got to meet. And then after Amadeus, moved around a little bit, was in the RMS space with revenue analytics. Then went over to Salesforce on the marketing cloud side, selling into hospitality, was a strategic account executive over there. And then I was at another RMS company called Flyer. Started when it was Pace and then changed into Flyer. And then I've been at Cloudbeds since August of last year. So, really exciting. You talk about, what makes Cloudbeds and what's sort of interesting about Cloudbeds. I swore I would never work for a PMS company, because I've worked with CRM, CRS, RMS, pick your acronyms, ABC, EFG.
All of them.
Right? And so, because PMSs historically were always the places where customer experiences, my deals, right, all went to die. Right? Because PMSs historically sort of box themselves in as these definitely not places of innovation, right? If you were thinking of the hospitality technology stack as it developed out, in the 2000s, the PMSs were like these bricks, these stones, and then you kind of found the innovation around the edge. And a lot of technology that you and I know and the people that we know, all of that innovation happened around, in some cases, in spite of the PMS, right? And then despite that push. So the idea of working for a PMS company was very not something I wanted to do. And as I sometimes joke, at Cloudbeds, I still don't work for a PMS company.
I like that. It's true. Yeah.
No, it really is. And so, one of the things when I was looking for a new role that I put at the top of my North Star list was to look for a company that was in growth mode, but specifically going through innovation versus acquisition. And Cloudbeds sort of has that in spades, right? The entire team from Adam and Richard, really focused on how we can do things differently, not getting caught in these sort of industry shibboleths around, what is a PMS and what a PMS needs to be, but looking at it from what a PMS could be. And so when I think about the picture, the kind of the thing about cloud beds, that's a big part of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I'm sitting here thinking they must have had to do something really incredible to pull you over, because from someone that's saying I would never, and I've sold PMS too, so I feel you. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, I don't know if I could ever do it again. For them to pull you over had to have had something to really attract you, especially after working for, the companies that you were at. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And Cloudbeds comes up often in my conversations, especially with like consultants who are saying, this is the system makes a lot of sense, right, for what they're doing, and it solves a lot of problems. So I think it's phenomenal. And I'm excited. I'm excited to hear more. So today we're going to talk about like what makes a great PMS in 2025, because I kind of came up in the environment that you did, where it was like on-site servers and all, massive support fees every year, and you had to upgrade, and it was all this money, and it was just very clunky. The PMS world was. Clearly that has shifted and changing. So talk to me about, first of all, what is kind of the different model now? So there's the all-in-one type of PMS, and then you have these kind of hub and spoke. Can you paint the picture and educate us today on what are those models? And then in your opinion, like what do they deliver to the end user?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. So I'm actually going to, if it's okay, I actually want to start off by stepping back just a second, just a tiny bit, and thinking about it from the perspective of, what is a PMS, right? And most people, not incorrectly necessarily, see a PMS as that specialized accounting system for hotels, which tracks the flow of money and people around a property, right? And yes, a PMS is that, right? But it's that attitude that's actually contributed so many of the problems, and it's ignoring the idea that a PMS is that specialized accounting system, but it is also the primary interaction layer for the vast majority of guest-facing team members, whether it's from the desk, even spa, etc. At some point, everybody that interacts with guests is usually has some level of interaction with the PMS system, right?
So true. Yeah.
But, in the same way that we don't send our hotel accounting teams out on sales calls, or it's cool if there's a line in the lobby to check in, and the finance person walks by to say, hey, can I help? Would you like something to drink? Again, they're not doing that on a daily basis, right? When we think of accounting systems, we don't think of guests and user experiences, et cetera, et cetera. That's where I think a lot of the problems of PMSs, self-imposed, have come from. Right. And so the reason I want to introduce that idea is that when you think about this all-in-one versus hub and spoke paradigm, which has dominated the industry for years, I actually think that's the wrong question to ask, because it shouldn't be all-in-one versus hub and spoke. There actually should be an element of a third way.
Okay. Right? So tell me this.
Right. So what do I mean by this? Right. So all-in-one, obviously, one system does it all, right? And then these, you think of often smaller companies or or companies focusing on smaller hotels, and then these sort of hub and spoke. Well, in my idea, the paradigm should be, it's not the PMS in the middle and everything around it, right? It is, think of the PMS almost as an overarching layer, which then surrounds the rest of the hospitality technology stack. So the PMS is actually on the outside instead of in the middle, right? And so the third way is, when you look at the scope of the hospitality industry, a hotel is a family-run 5 rooms on a beach in Thailand, and hospitality is often also 1,500 rooms and 150,000 square feet of meeting space in a field near an airport in the Midwest, right? It is, and it's everything in
huge, right?
Exactly. And so when you think of and that's why you've seen a lot of fragmentation. You have PMS systems that are like, oh, we work here, oh, we work over here, right? But in today's era, where management companies or group brands are trying to think about how they standardize tech stacks, how they're not working in 17 different systems, right? Those sorts of hyper-focused systems start to run into lots of problems in that enterprise sense, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so, although Cloudbeds got our start working with smaller hotels, providing that sort of more all-in-one experience, over the last couple of years, we've really opened up our system. So we have all of the integrations that larger properties need. That's CRS systems like Synexus or Amadeus or SHR, whether that's RMS systems like Duetto, et cetera. And just to mention some of our newer connections. And when you think about Cloudbeds, we have a lot of this functionality on our platform as well. So we are the only PMS that has a built-in channel manager, right? We acquired built that out, but we have an integration to SiteMinder, right?
Okay,
And
so you offer both, right?
Our we see it as our purpose is not to force people into making decisions, either to use our systems or to force people to go out and source an entire tech stack. Because again, let's imagine a couple of sort of different hotel types. You've got, let's say, a 75 room property, right? That's sitting out on a lake, somewhere distant, mostly transient, kind of leisure guests. And then you've got another 75 room property that's in a city center somewhere, right? A lot of business, some leisure, that sort of stuff. Same room count, but very different needs. So the resort leisure property might need a heavy duty CRM, right? CRM. You and I have that experience working with some of those systems, right?
We do, right.
On the other hand, they might not need a super powered best in breed RMS. They just need something that makes rate changes, because again, they're just different sort of markets. Whereas that urban property might have the exact same opposite, right? They have a small breakfast space. They don't have a ton of amenities. Yeah, they do some marketing, but it's not that intense, right? But what they really need is a turbocharged, best in breed RMS, cutting edge, that's like constantly optimizing for optimal rate. Dynamic, right? And so even there, same room count, different markets, different needs. So we want to be able to have the functionality on our platform. It's not going to work for every hotel, but it's going to work for a bunch of them. And when hotels need to add in functionality, we have the integrations and the partnerships. And that's the idea behind the third way.
I love the third way. Well, and what you've done is actually, I'm learning just sitting here, because I think traditionally we see Cloudbeds as the all-in-one. Like this is the all-in-one. It's, I don't want to say out of the box because it's more innovative than that. But for me, I'm like, oh, so there's actually both out there. And I think that's nice for hoteliers, because I mean, that's why Affixify exists, right? Is because we've been preaching like, hey, it's this, what works for this hotel does not necessarily work for this hotel, even if they're similar, right? Everybody has unique needs. So what you're saying is find a platform like Cloudbeds that's going to meet those unique needs and not pigeonhole you into one way. And I think that's a really, really smart way to do that.
And that's one of the reasons that I love Affixify. I mean, the fact that I love you, Stephanie, and I just think it's great what you're doing. But just that you're literally taking what has been a very sort of static paradigm in terms of how hotels and technology providers find each other, right? And you're really shaking things up. And that's one of the things that I think is really important. And I work, and I know you guys work with consultants as well, to help to do that. But when I talk to consultants, one of the things that I've found both is really important at Cloudbeds, as well as when I worked at Flyer, which was also sort of paradigm busting in many ways when it comes to the RMS space, is it's how RFPs are written, right? And so it's like, you get this, right? These RFPs that are these massive interrogations on features and functionality. And sometimes I just go, but you're just asking the wrong question. Questions. And I think Affixify is such a great way to kind of open up some of those different questions. And anyway,
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I so appreciate that. We're passionate, and it's cool to be able to say like we're listing Cloudbeds on our platform. I mean, to us that felt like a far-reaching dream 3 years ago, So to be doing this and partnering is wonderful. And I want to talk about something you said, because this is so. If you imagine like the old school checking in to a hotel, I have this vision of like an old, like a green screen or a gray screen. Really, I hate to say it, but this like ugly UI, and it's not even a UI, it's just input output, right?
Right.
But you have talked about the innovation behind Cloudbeds, and not just Cloudbeds, right? Like PMSs are evolving. UI is now becoming a thing. It's not just a thing for, those of us that use social media or whatever. I mean, it's now important on the B2B side. So talk to me about the non-negotiables of a UI, because I've never really in my mind paired PMS good UI, right? But
Right.
That's happening. And so why is it non-negotiable now? Why have we moved past the green screens and the gray screens and moved into actually having a smart, intuitive UI for a property management system? I want your take on that.
And listen, we can do a whole 20 minutes just on this. So I'm going to, so feel free to like rein me in if I'm going on too long. But
I'm ready. Okay. I got my coffee.
There you go. I think there's a couple of factors at play here, right? So first thing, I'm actually going to quote some numbers out of a NYU study that we worked with a couple of professors to do, and where they talked about how UX matters in a very real way when it comes to some surprising things, right? Job satisfaction among hotel employees,
Really?
right? Yeah, and think about this.
Wow.
We all have these. Imagine if I said, hey, in order to use this thing, you need to, take a training class for 40 hours. Come on, nobody would, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a generation of people working at our front desks and in our hotels that grew up with this technology, right? And so, just the idea of them spending hours training, they don't like it. They don't, they're used to good UI. Then you get into this idea of technology enabling hospitality. This would be a really horrible webinar if all you saw the entire time we were talking was the top of my head, right? Or my bald spot, right? But how often do you go to check into a hotel and you spend, half of that 90 seconds to 2 minutes talking to the top of someone's head because they're like looking at a keyboard, right? So how do we change that? How do, UX matters with that, right? And then when we think about this idea around turnover and, and how hard it is to find people. And by the way, that turnover, we like to sometimes think of that in terms of hourly team members. AHLA has shown that turnover in manager roles in hospitality is 25 to 35% higher than non-hospitality.
Wow.
So
I did not know this.
Yeah. So this sort of turnover is happening at all levels of the industry. It's constant, right? And if you're in a seasonal area, it's even worse, right? And it's even harder to find people for roles these days, right? So all of these different factors coming into play, UX matters in surprising ways. And comes to play. It's not just about being easy to use. It has trickle-down effects across the org and how your team members are empowered or not to actually provide real moments of hospitality.
That's, truly phenomenal. And it makes me think of a conversation I had last week with an owner. He owns multiple properties. And internationally, he told me my real vision and dream is to be able to walk a guest in and sit them down with a fresh cup of coffee or tea and talk to them and check them in seamlessly without the desk. And I was like, because we were actually talking about PMSs, and I'm telling him, well, that's possible now. You just have to make some changes, but it's so different. It's a paradigm shift. And I think we don't often relate the labor shortage or turnover to technology, but that's exactly what I'm hearing from you is we have to make it enjoyable to show up and you at the front desk or as a manager. And if your team's not adopting, that's not going to work. That's not going to work long term. And then you have a labor issue. Is that what you're saying essentially?
Yeah, 100%. Let me just put it this way. I was talking to someone and they were very excited because the legacy PMS provider that will remain nameless, that they used, moved to a newer cloud-based platform, and they were very excited because training on this new cloud-based platform, is down to 26 to 30 hours of training, and people are like, oh yeah, I can get people like running solo shifts in like 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I was like, cool story, bro.
Yeah.
Because at Cloudbeds, we're looking at 6 to 8 hours of training, all online,
Wow. Oh my gosh.
and people running solo shifts in 1 to 2
Yeah.
weeks. Now, there's
Yeah.
certainly benefits to in-person training, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that. In large organizations, it's a thing. We talk about Cloudbeds being known for working with smaller properties, let's say 29 room properties.
Right.
We just brought live last week 2,900 room property in Orlando, Florida. And so
massive.
Something like that, we had a team on site, kind of thing like that.
Yeah.
Right? But
yeah.
the idea is that 29 room property can do all of this remotely without a problem. So again, how do you kind of do that? And that's where UX, again, just super important.
Yeah, no, I think that's phenomenal. And I think that's going to help the hoteliers who either watch this now or back on YouTube, or, that we'll send this out to them as well. Because I think when they're making their requirements list, they're going to have to consider the impact of the UI on their staff. And you bring up such a phenomenal point. And honestly, something that I just don't think we equate necessarily in our minds between UI and staff engagement. And then in our last couple of minutes, I'm going to throw it out there because it is what the industry wants to know. AI. I honestly feel like I talk about AI way too much in my day-to-day. It's so funny. I wonder if we're going to look back and it's like, wow, we've really made such a big deal out of that. But I am curious. We hear about AI everywhere else, right? Like everywhere. But in the PMS side, what is your take? Has it taken hold in the PMS landscape? Are we going to see changes coming? Like, I'm super curious of your take on AI and the PMS side of the house.
Well, listen, I fully understand. I sometimes say the words AI in conversation, and it's like almost like painful, right? Like,
yeah.
And I say that's when it's not AI, it's I is the phrase that I'm trying to popularize.
Right.
And there is absolutely a lot of AI washing out there. But look, Jasmine, I have been around for long enough. I have seen hype cycles, right? I mean, I remember when all of our booking engines were going to be on social media. And all of our bookings are going to come on from Facebook or something like that. Not that long ago, all of the CRS was all going to move to blockchain. And then every hotel was going to make millions of dollars selling NFTs or some such whatever, right? That's kind of like building carbon fiber horseshoes. What we really need to be looking at is car. And so I think there's couple of things, well, maybe two main ones when it comes to AI and PMS, right? The first thing is to understand that a lot of the hype, not hype because it's real, but a lot of the action in AI over the last couple of years has been around generative AI, right? Which is all about creating content, taking really large data sets and mimicking as best it can human creativity and creating new content.
Right.
We go back to the beginning of the conversation where we talk about the main purposes of what is a PMS, right? It is that accounting system and it is that interaction layer. So there's not as much need for that generative, that creativity in context, right?
Right.
But that is not the end all and be all of AI, right? So where we get really excited, where I absolutely see a future for AI-driven operations in this industry, is utilizing areas of AI that are called agentic and causal AI, right? And that's what we're using in our products, especially those in Cloudbeds Labs, but then what's coming with Cloudbeds Intelligence as well. So when I look at products like our Signals product, right, which is using causal AI to build the industry's first revenue marketing platform, not just marketing, but revenue marketing. We talk about commercial, but so you don't have people just reporting to the same platform, to the same person, but you have them working in the same platform.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Okay.
And then you talk about things like our Engage product, which is not just another voice concierge, but because it has the agentic layer and because it trains on PMS data and conceivably CRS data, it can actually do things. That's the whole idea of agentic, right? That it can make a reservation. So it's not just let me talk to you, but actually, oh yes, let me complete that booking and get that all done. And so tying this back to a couple of things where we talked about innovation in hospitality, where we talked about UX, and where we talked about this need to provide hospitality and that labor shortage. I get really excited about things like agentic because this is where we can actually not replace people, but give people a tool that can enable a person to do their core functions better. So right now, you call a 40-room hotel and you want to make a reservation. And if chances are you're getting put on hold 2 to 4 times, right? Or if you're the person standing in front of that desk agent, your conversation is getting interrupted 3 to 4 times as that one person that's working the shift is picking up the phone, putting people on hold the whole time, right?
Right.
And so the idea of being able to give that person a digital coworker, right? They can take those reservations, they can do that, not have those reservations, those calls also then be sent to a call center halfway around the world, which is not that hospitable if you think about it.
No, it's not. I never liked that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so this is actually how we're going to start using AI to really enhance the operational experience. The key thing, I think, is PMSs and other companies are doing this, is Adam Harris, our CEO, nailed it when he said that you have to remember that behind every data point is a human experience.
Very true.
Approach it from that perspective. It's not AI for AI's sake. It's AI to provide actionable, insightful, and meaningful differences that can improve the human experiences. Because AI is not going to enable a front desk person to be genuine, to be hospitable.
Right.
But AI can reduce the workload of that front desk person. So they actually have 2 minutes to check a guest in instead of 90 seconds. Or the phone isn't ringing constantly as the guest in front of you is explaining why they really need something. That makes a difference. And so that's why I'm excited about AI and PMS, because I think, especially from Cloudbeds, we're going to do it right.
I love it. Well, and I think what you just said brings home the point that I said it yesterday on another interview, and we talk about it a lot. People got into hospitality not necessarily to figure out technology. We did, but like on the guest facing side. Right. People get into hospitality to create an experience, and because typically they're connectors and they have this gift of wanting to make people feel welcome. And so what I'm hearing is, instead of technology being a hindrance to that, which it has been for so long when it comes to these antiquated platforms, it's going to be an enhancement to that, and it's going to help our industry. And I think that answers this whole panic of, are we going to take away jobs and all of it? It's like, no, we're actually we're helping people to be better at their job. It's an empowering thing, not a scary thing when you talk about the place AI may have in hospitality.
100%. You got it.
I love it. Well, this has been so good. I can't wait to share this with, our network, with those, we talk to hotels all the time, and many are starting to bring PMS, needs to Affixify. So this will, for our listeners, be on YouTube later, so you can access it. Josh, if anyone wants to talk to you directly, of course, we can connect you through Affixify, but where is the best place to find you?
Yes, well, other than the Affixify website, where I highly encourage you to go check it out.
Of course.
Jasmine and Stephanie are just doing awesome things, and I'm hugely supportive of this. If you just want to find me, I'm on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Josh Graham. My email address is josh.graham@cloudbeds.com. I accept carrier pigeons.
Anything.
Anything, exactly.
I love it. Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to those who joined us today. We will be back next Wednesday with my friend Blair McCoy, who is both consultant and technologist. And we are excited. Have a great long weekend. And Josh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Okay. See you guys next time.
Bye.